Revd Jennifer Furphy of St Mark's Anglican Church in Balnarring on the Mornington Peninsula has organised the churches of Balnarring to toll their bell each Tuesday to protest against the continued incarceration of children in refugee detention centres. Today, there are an estimated 1,138 children held in detention in Australia and Nauru.
About 10 years ago, the Victorian Council of Churches challenged all the churches in Victoria to ring their bells at 5 p.m. once a month in support of the children that were then in detention. The numbers were very, very much lower, and it just struck me that this was a time when we should do some more passive resistance. And well, for a long time in this parish we've had a real heart for the plight of the asylum seekers, and I thought we've actually got to do something, because I think by remaining silent when the government's doing this, and I'm not just talking about the government, because of course the opposition has the same policy, but by remaining silent I think we risk losing our humanity. So as the church, we've really got to be people who are prepared to stand up and say, we actually think that this is wrong. The most recent number I could come up with was 1,138. I'm not quite sure if that's exactly accurate, but it's a roundabout, and as far as I'm concerned, one is too many. Children are by definition considered to be innocent, and they have a right to seek asylum anyway, as their parents do. And Australia are signatories to the UN Convention on Refugees, so we actually have an obligation to treat their claim for asylum seriously. We have to remember that it's not only the ones that are offshore that we are ringing the bell for. We're ringing the bell for all the children in detention. And the heartbreaking thing is that some of these children have no hope because then their claims are not being processed. And I just think it's completely wrong, and so do a lot of other people. When I handed out the flyers around the shops here, there wasn't one single person that didn't agree wholeheartedly with what we were doing and what we were saying. So we're not just voices in the wilderness. There are a lot of Australians that feel the same as us, and we need to be able to somehow make our feelings felt. Australians are at risk of losing their humanity if we don't show that we don't necessarily just line up and agree with what both our opposition and our government are doing. I actually emailed the Victorian Council of Churches, and they said go ahead and we'll put it to the standing committee, so it may follow. I've also contacted the members of our deanery and challenged them, the local Uniting Church, the Catholic Church just a few kilometres down the road, and everybody's on board with it. And whether we get stacks of people turning up or whether we get hardly any is not really important. We'll still ring the bell. When you think about it, Christians have always been the ones who've spoken out about hospitality to strangers, looking after the ones in prison, the ones who are sick, and I think that we always should continue to do that. That's what Jesus did, and that's what we need to do. Well, when I think about the children in detention, I feel utterly ashamed. I feel ashamed to be Australian. I feel ashamed of our leaders who have been elected with great hope, and the conditions are apparently appalling. We wouldn't want that for our children, and I think that that's been reflected in all the responses that I've got. We're not for a minute trying to say that it isn't a complex problem. It is a complex problem, but we're not politicians, and the politicians have been elected with the understanding that they will have the capacity to be able to find just solutions to these things. But we don't think this is a just solution. We don't think that these people are being treated as human beings, which they are, and that, it seems to me, is wrong. Join in, ring your bell if you've got one. If you haven't, go down to your local church with a handbell.
Michael Rodden, Anglican Media, Melbourne.